Hi, I'm Adam McDonald from McDonald Innovations. I'm here with the AutoTrickler V4, the fourth version of our AutoTrickler system. And in this video, I'm going to show unboxing and initial setup and some basic troubleshooting for the AutoTrickler. So the platen is two parts, an upper and a lower part, and place it on the scale and then kind of turn it and make sure it sits properly. The power adapter that comes with the scale, we don't need that, so we're just going to put that away because the AutoTrickler comes with a replacement. This panel that comes with the scale, we don't need this either. Okay, so in the AutoTrickler box, we have 3 boxes and the instruction manual. So the panel has a groove on one side and bumpers on the other side. Next we have the hopper and accessories. So this is the powder hopper, and inside the hopper we have the glass cup. Here we have our replacement power adapter for the scale and the accessory kit. Inside the accessory kit we have funnel, the serial connector, the centering tray, hopper cover, an Allen key, bumpers, a jumper wire, brush, 2 acrylic windows, and a business card. So the main AutoTrickler housing has a zip tie, which is meant to hold the large tube in place during shipping. So this can be removed. Okay, so we're ready to start assembling the AutoTrickler V4. So we're going to go through the manual together step by step. The first step is the centering tray installed on the scale platen. So the tray has double-sided tape, and then we're going to position the tray close to the edge of the platen. So next we're going to build the windscreen platform. The first thing we need to do is install these 4 bumpers onto the 4 corners on the bottom. Next we take the 4 arms and install them. Now we can place this on the scale. Then we can put in 3 of these panels, one in the side, the back, and the other side. Next we take the panel that came with the AutoTrickler, make sure the groove is facing down, and we're going to put this tab in the back and press it down fully onto the panel so it's completely inside the groove, nice and solid and doesn't move. Now we're ready to install the AutoTrickler housing onto the scale. First thing we'll do is make sure that the large tube moves freely. We're going to install the funnel onto the bottom of the housing, and the funnel just press and twist and it should snap into place. So we're going to place the AutoTrickler housing on the panel, and it's important to make sure that it's positioned on the 3 bumpers correctly. So the best way to do this is to take your fingers and kind of squeeze on these motor panels around the bumper and make sure that it's centered there. And then the same on the back side, make sure that the back of the housing is centered on the panel. And then when it's in place, there should be a very slight upward tilt to the housing relative to the level of the panel. Next, we will install the 2 acrylic windows. Next, we're going to place the cup. Now, we should see that the cup is under the funnel, but ideally the funnel would be very slightly offset from the center of the cup, which helps avoid powder splashing. Now we're ready to install the hopper onto the V4. So the hopper has a valve which can be opened or closed by rotating the base. So to install it on the V4, it needs to be closed. Then press it in place and make sure it goes all the way down. And then when you turn it, a screw will slot into the housing, which locks it in place. So while that valve is open and powder can flow, the hopper cannot be removed from the V4. Next, we're ready to install the serial connector into the back of the scale. So there's a small cover on a new scale that you can just remove. Now, this is optional. This will stay like that, but if you plan on moving your scale and you'd like it to be more secure, there are screws captive inside the connector. Next, we have the power adapter for the scale. So this is a replacement power adapter that we provide because the one that comes with the scale from A&D may not have enough power to run the motors, so always use this power adapter when you're using the AutoTrickler. Now we should see the scale turn on with a weight displayed. Now we can plug the V4 in using the serial cable here. So there's a locking tab. Just make sure that they line up and the colors match. And you should see a green light for 1 second on the bottom of the housing. Next, we're ready to configure the scale serial port. So these are settings that we're going to configure in the scale, which will stay permanently set in the scale, and they control how the scale sends its weight data to the AutoTrickler to allow it to work. But you should follow the manual. For the first 4 sections are very similar. We'll just go into the appropriate menu and set the settings step by step as it explains in the manual. Now with the 4 primary settings changed, we need to change the response mode of the scale. If it's not set to fast, it will still work, but it will work poorly and overshoot constantly, and it's a very common issue. So make absolutely sure that you set the response mode to fast. So to do that, we hold mode until it says response, and right here it says response mid. That's the default. We're going to press mode to switch it to fast and print. The next setting that will change is not actually in the manual, but if you want to operate in grains unit, you can use grams or grains. By default, the scale will be in grams. We can press mode to switch it to grains. There is a way to set it to grains automatically so that every time you turn it on, it stays in grains. So to do that, we'll hold sample and then press sample until we see unit. Then print. Now we're going to press sample until we see grains and re-zero, and you'll see a little circle appear on the left side to indicate that grains is turned on. Then print, cal to exit, and we're in grains. Okay, now we're finally ready to connect the AutoTrickler app to the AutoTrickler. So this app can be downloaded from the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store on any iOS or Android device that has Bluetooth Low Energy. So when we're ready to connect, the scale is powered, the AutoTrickler is powered, and then tap this button to scan. And you'll see a connect button appear. You can either wait or push it to make it go a little bit faster, and then it will connect to the V4. So we see here the controls for setting the target weight and running the motors and disconnecting. So the first thing we'll do is we'll run the motors just to make sure we have connection and mechanically everything is working and ready to go. So we have a fast button which runs the large tube. And then we can press stop. And there's a slow button which runs the small tube. And then we can push stop. The next thing we'll do is we'll try to set a target weight. So there's no powder in here. We're just going to set a target weight to get it to start dispensing, just to make sure that the scale's been configured correctly and everything is ready to dispense powder. So we can enter any number, say 50, and then push this button to tap to set target, and it should turn green, and the large tube should start running. So before we proceed further with the setup, I have a few notes about the recommended procedure for powering the scale. So the on-off button is really just for the display. The scale is powered and warming up as long as it's plugged in. So if you always leave your scale plugged in, it will always be ready to go when you're ready to start reloading. It takes around 5 minutes from a cold temperature for it to warm up and stop drifting, but it's okay to start using it if it's not fully warmed up. It doesn't cause any problems. It just might drift a little bit more than usual for the first few minutes. I recommend unplugging the AutoTrickler cable when you're not using it, just so it doesn't accidentally start running, if you accidentally push the button on your phone or something. So I would generally leave the scale plugged in, but disconnect the cable for the AutoTrickler when you're not using it. Now about the calibration of the scale, if you have a 100 gram calibration weight, you can calibrate your scale. If you don't worry, because it's not that important. So I'm going to show as an example. This is a new scale that I haven't calibrated yet. So I remove the cup and re-zero, and now it's measuring 0 grams. Then I take my 100 gram calibration weight, and it measures, this scale measures 100.08. So that amount of calibration error equates to around 0.03 grains of a 40 grain charge weight, which is about 1 kernel. So not calibrating your scale generally means that all of your charge weights might have 1 extra kernel or 1 less kernel, which really isn't a big deal unless you have many scales and you're using them all at the same time. So I would generally recommend, if you have a calibration weight, to calibrate your scale once when you first set it up. You take it out of the box, but you don't need to do it every single time you reload. There's no point. So to calibrate your scale, hold Cal, print, then it says 100, so we put the weight on, and now it's going to measure what 100 grams is. Print, end. So now it measures 0 grams without the calibration weight, and exactly 100 grams with the calibration weight. Now, we're not ready to dispense powder yet, but I'm going to demonstrate how to put powder in and take it out. So I have some H4350 here just as an example. So first we make sure the window is in place, the hopper is locked, it's in place, and the valve is open, ready to go. Then we pour powder in. And you should see that powder fills the back area here. And now I'll show how to remove the powder when you want to switch over to a different powder or finish reloading for the day. Now the first thing to do is close the hopper and remove it. And now place it behind the V4, and you can lift the window and it will pour most of the powder into the hopper. Now the hopper can set flat on the table. With it disconnected, we pick up the V4, place it over, give it a little shake, and you can pour out maybe a couple taps, and the powder should all come out. Then just look in the back and make sure that there's no powder. You can use the brush if you want. And another trick is you can look through the tubes, through the front, and see that there's no powder inside the tubes. And now it's empty and ready for the next powder. Now the hopper can go over the original container, position it and turn it, and it will pour all the powder into the container. Okay, troubleshooting Bluetooth problems. So I've got it disconnected just to simulate a Bluetooth issue. I try to scan with the app, and after a few seconds, it will say AutoTrickler not found. So if this happens and it's plugged in, the most likely cause is there's another phone or tablet that's already connected. It won't be able to be found in a scan if it's connected to something else. So the easiest thing to do is just to unplug it, plug it back in. Make sure that you see a green light to indicate that it has power and you've plugged the cable in correctly, and then scan again and it should find it. Now, if it doesn't work, there's one more thing you can do. Download the app called Light Blue, which is a general app for scanning for Bluetooth low energy devices. And if it can see that the AutoTrickler exists, then it means that the hardware is okay, and that will just help troubleshoot the issue for you. So if we go to the Light Blue app, we see a list of Bluetooth devices that are in your house, and one of them is called BT05. If you see that, that's the AutoTrickler. Now, troubleshooting the large tube rotating. It should be freely able to spin with your fingers. You can turn it and move it slightly forward and backward, and it should feel like the housing is not holding it too tightly. So here's what it looks like when it's too tight and it's not working properly. It may be turning, but it's making loud noises and it's not turning well. So now I'll demonstrate how you can fix this. So we take a Phillips 1 screwdriver, and we're going to be loosening the 4 screws that hold the motor in place. Now with the 4 screws loose, the motor can slide in different positions. So our objective here is to hold the motor so that it's removing the slack from the belt, but not pulling any tighter than it needs to avoid skipping teeth. So just make sure it's not too tight. Looser is always better. And then tighten the screws. Now make sure it can turn freely, and when we run it, it spins normal. Now, there is an issue that can affect roughly 1% of brand new scales, where it won't provide power over the serial port, so you'll plug it in and you won't have power in the AutoTrickler. This should not be an issue if you already have had one for a while. It's just that about 1% of brand new scales have this issue, so we provide this jumper wire which will bypass the power and provide power to the AutoTrickler in a different way. So to make sure, first you want to make sure that you actually do have this issue. So make sure the scale is plugged in and it's working, and make sure that the cable is plugged in correctly with the colors lined up. And when you unplug and plug the cable in, if it's working, you'll see a green light. If you don't see a green light, then it's potentially not working. So to fix this, we're going to plug the jumper wire into the back of the scale. Once the plate's been removed, you'll see this little ribbon cable on the inside of the scale. So this is where we're going to plug the wire in. First, we unplug the power cord. Just make sure that the scale's unplugged before we do this. Now we're going to plug one end of this wire into the top right position with the notch facing up. And there's a close-up picture of this in the manual. And when we take this connector off, on the bottom, you'll see a little black socket. The other end of this wire goes in there. Now we plug it back in. Now plug in the scale and look for the green light. If you see a green light, you have power, problem solved. If you don't see a green light, there's something else wrong. Unplug it and contact us for help. Thank you for watching this setup video up to this point. Now we have the AutoTrickler V4 and the scale set up. We have powder in place and we're almost ready to dispense powder. But first we need to go through some calibration and tuning procedures, which we'll cover in the next video. So stay tuned for that.